Coming up on Arirang News, social distancing is raised in the greater Seoul region by 1 notch now that the daily average of COVID-19 cases in the area has risen above 100. Most businesses will not be affected by the new measures. The U.S. drug maker Moderna announces that its coronavirus vaccine is 94.5% effective. According to Dr. Fauci, vaccinations could begin as soon as late December. And the International Hydrographic Organization, which governs the names of seas and oceans, will no longer use the name Sea of Japan, but instead use a number to refer to the body of water between Japan and Korea. It's 5 p.m. here in Seoul. Thanks for tuning in to Arirang News. I'm Devin Whiting. South Korea reported 230 new cases of COVID-19 on Tuesday. It's the 4th day in a row there have been more than 200. And because of the high number of cases in the capital, social distancing is going to level 1.5. Kim Hyun-sung has the details.
South Korea on Tuesday reported 230 new COVID-19 cases, 202 of which were locally transmitted. 137 of these infections were from the capital region. Seoul City alone saw around 90 cases, including 9 from a cluster infection at a sauna in Seoul district. The rapid spread in the capital has brought this week's average number of daily cases in the greater Seoul area to a little over 110. In response, the South Korean government is bumping up the capital region's distancing level to 1.5. The tightened measures will start on midnight Thursday and last for 2 weeks. During that time, there will be a stricter limit on the number of customers in facilities like wedding halls and funeral homes. Also, customers can no longer eat in singing rooms or dance in clubs. Religious gatherings and sports events can only seat 30% of their total capacity. Schools will go back to having a mandatory attendance cap of 2/3, and protests and festivals are limited to under 100 people. But some say that to effectively curb the spread, the capital should skip straight to level 2. Under level 2, cafes and restaurants can't have visitors after 9 p.m., and entertainment facilities like bars and singing rooms have to shut down. However, health officials say tightening the measures further would hit businesses hard.
Under level 1.5, most businesses can continue to operate, but just with a limited number of visitors. Level 2, on the other hand, handicaps many businesses from operating at all. So our day-to-day life would be greatly restricted and threatened.
Regions outside the capital have also seen spikes in COVID-19. Jeonnam National University Hospital in Gwangju has locked down its wards after reporting 27 confirmed patients in less than a week. The hospital will halt all emergency care until this Sunday. Kim Hyun-sung, Arirang News.
The U.S. biotech firm Moderna says its vaccine has been found to be nearly 95% effective. That's even better than the reported effectiveness of Pfizer's vaccine announced last week. Bae-yeon-ji has this report.
U.S. pharmaceutical company Moderna reported Monday that its COVID-19 vaccine is 94.5% effective. During a clinical trial conducted on 30,000 participants, half were given a placebo, a shot which has no effect, and the other half were given the vaccine. Over several months, 90 people who were given the placebo contracted COVID-19, with 11 developing severe symptoms. But among those who received the vaccine, only 5 contracted COVID-19, and none became severely ill. Moderna also said the vaccine did not show any serious side effects. The company's CEO called the result a, quote, game changer in the fight against the pandemic.
The first agreement that we reached with the U.S. government was for an order of $100 million. So we anticipate to be able to ship up to 20 million of those 100 million before the end of the year.
The news from Moderna comes just a week after Pfizer reported an efficacy rate of more than 90% for its experimental vaccine. A key advantage over Pfizer's vaccine is that Moderna's does not require ultra-cold storage, making it much easier to distribute. Moderna says the vaccine only needs standard refrigerator temperatures of 2 to 8 degrees Celsius for 30 days and can be stored for up to 6 months at minus 20 degrees, whereas Pfizer's vaccine must be shipped and stored at minus 70 degrees. Meanwhile, more vaccines are expected to be released next year. Russia recently announced positive results of its vaccine Sputnik V, and a Chinese-developed vaccine Sinovac is in phase 3 of clinical trials. Taeunji, Arirang News.
In other news, the International Hydrographic Organization, which governs the official naming of seas and oceans, has decided to refer to them using numbers rather than specific names. This could help resolve, or at least for the purposes of the IHO, the long-running dispute between Korea and Japan over the name of the body of water that lies between them. Yoon Jung-min reports.
The body of water between South Korea and Japan, at least at the IHO, will be referred to by a number rather than being called the Sea of Japan. Seoul's foreign ministry says the International Hydrographic Organization on Monday agreed by consensus to refer to all seas and oceans by unique numerical identifiers instead of specific names. The IHO's chart of sea names, a document known as S23, will be replaced by a new chart called S130 that will conform to the new rule. South and North Korea believe that only using the name Sea of Japan, as had been done on S23, is a reflection of Tokyo's past imperialism because the sea was officially named in the 1920s when the Korean peninsula was colonized by Japan. Since 1997, Seoul has been pushing to have East Sea used as a co-equal name, and the two Koreas and Japan started discussing the issue in 2017, but little progress was made. The IHO's latest decision is to be officially announced in early December. Diplomatic sources in Seoul say the IHO has made it clear that S23 will no longer serve as a valid standard and will be made available only as historical data. They said that it is not true that some Japanese media have continued to insist that S23 is valid even after Monday's decision. The sources add that South Korea will participate actively in creating the new standard, S130, and will continue its efforts to ensure that the name East Sea is used widely on the international stage. In the meantime, South Korea is expected to continue serving as one of the IHO Council members until 2022. Yoon Jung-min, Arirang News.
A plan approved 4 years ago to expand the main airport serving Busan in Korea's southeast now appears likely to be scrapped. A feasibility study, the results of which were released on Tuesday, found that expanding the airport at Gimhae presents issues with safety, noise, and the environment, requiring significant improvements, but there's not enough time to make. Furthermore, it said Gimhae is not appropriate as a regional gateway. To expand the airport, the report said, would require cutting through mountains in the area, which would need approval from the city government. The city of Busan opposes the plan and would rather build a whole new airport on Kadok Island, just to the city's southwest. After a series of deaths in recent weeks at construction sites, President Moon Jae-in has ordered officials to use government funds and manpower to do more on site to prevent such accidents. In Tuesday's weekly cabinet meeting, he said now is the time for South Korea to rid itself of the disgraceful title of the country with the highest industrial accident rate among members of the OECD. As for the government's decision today to raise the level of social distancing, he urged the people to cooperate to prevent cases from surging again. President Moon emphasized that the government is going to do its best to make sure that the nationwide college entrance exam, set for about 2 weeks from now, is carried out safely. Time now for an in-depth look at the market news this afternoon, and for that I'm joined on the line by Mr. Daniel Yu, Global Strategist at Yuanta Securities. Mr. Yu, thank you for making time today.
Thank you for having me today.
Well, the main indices on Wall Street all closed higher overnight. News of the vaccine by Moderna yielding good results in clinical trials. The Dow touching a record high during the session, now just on the cusp of 30,000. What's the story in the global markets?
Yes, as you said, U.S. market rose quite sharply. If you look at the Dow Jones, it was up about 1.6%. S&P 500 also gained about 1.2%. NASDAQ lagged a bit, but still, nevertheless, it was up 0.8%. If you look at the Moderna, which is a Massachusetts-based biotech firm, they came out with a vaccine that is 94% effective during the late-stage trial. And definitely, it seems that it has a much better tolerance to continue. And because of that, U.S. market took it as a very positive news that the economy will recover probably in the spring. Continuously, you are seeing the growth stocks kind of lagging versus the economic sensitive stocks showing quite a sharp rise in the U.S. If the continuation of the boosting measure happens and on top of the vaccine continues to be effective, then we think that the economy in U.S. will recover in the first quarter next year, and therefore the equity market continue to show a rising trend in the future.
Well, now here in Korea, the Kospi broke through 2,500 points yesterday, but slipped just a little bit today. The Kosdaq down a bit more. What happened here in Seoul?
Right. As you said, Kospi broke 2,500 territories. And if you look at from the bottom of 1,400, it is one of the best performing index in the world. And also, if you look at the Kosdaq, also showing a quite sharp rise versus the bottom. And if you look at the liquidity condition in Korea, it is very effective. We have seen continuation of money supply growth rate, and the government continues to do a boosting measure. And also, if you look at the export growth rate, it is picking up from the big minus in the past. Because of all these, we are seeing the Korean equity market showing a sharp rise, and we think that this kind of trend can continue with the regulation being positive for the equity market, as well as the boosting measures and the economic condition globally is positive for Korea. Even though the won has appreciated quite sharply, we think that if the global economy recovers, the exports should recover as well. And Korea is not a price competitive country, but rather the quality competitive country. So therefore, we think that the won is not going to affect that negatively. So all in all, we think that Kospi rising and Kosdaq rising in the future should continue in the future.
Well, also on news of the Moderna vaccine, it would seem the price of oil is up. West Texas for December delivery is up 3%. The price of gold back up a bit too. Tell us about that and where you see these commodities going.
Right. Clearly, with this kind of news of vaccine, we are seeing commodity prices rising because there is continuation of ample liquidity in the system. Particularly for the oil prices, it has recovered to well above $42 per barrel, which is quite a bit above top of the range. However, if you look at the supply and demand side, we think that supply can come back quite easily in the future because of the shale gas. And if that happens, then the prices could stabilize in the future. All in all, we are expecting the oil price to remain at above $40. The range bound should be somewhere between $40 to $50 in the future, given the fact the economy in the first quarter next year should recover. All in all, oil price, not just oil price, but most of other commodities are rising because of the liquidity condition in the global market, and also economy is recovering, affecting the inflation to pick up slightly.
All right, Mr. Yu, we'll have to leave it there for today. Thanks so much for sharing your insights. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
The number of people in South Korea who own more than one home rose last year by 92,000. This is despite government measures that would tend to discourage such a trend. The proportion of homeowners who have more than one property has been growing since 2014. Kim Jae-hee has this report.
Nearly 16% of homeowners in South Korea last year owned 2 or more properties. According to data from Statistics Korea on Tuesday, 84.1% of homeowners owned just one home in 2019, whereas 15.9% owned at least 2 homes. The 2,284,000 multiple homeowners in 2019 is up 92,000 from the previous year. Statistics Korea says the proportion of multiple homeowners has been increasing every year since 2014.
The proportion of multiple homeowners is rising, although its steepness has eased somewhat since 2017. Multiple homeowners accounted for 15.5% of the total homeowners in 2017, 15.6% in 2018, and 15.9% in 2019.
By region, multiple homeowners made up 20.7% of total homeowners in Jeju and 20.4% in Sejong in 2019. Incheon had a relatively low percentage with 14.5% of homeowners owning multiple properties. Meanwhile, when looking at households rather than individuals, 56.3% of households in 2019 owned at least one home, a rise of 0.1 percentage points from the previous year. Among those households, 27.7%, or 3,168,000 households, owned at least 2 homes. That's up 2.8% from the previous year. Gimhae Arirang News.
Before the 1970s, Korea's population was overwhelmingly rural, but over the past 50 years, as Koreans moved to the cities, data show the number of people living on farms has declined by almost 85%. This is according to data from Statistics Korea, showing the population living on farms last year accounted for just 2.2 million people. Of those, 47% were 65 years old or older, compared to just 5% of those in 1970. The government's encouraging people to take up rural life again. Last year, 11,500 people went back to farming, an increase of 12% compared to 2013. But this increase was mostly people in their 60s or older. And that brings us to the end of this newscast. Thank you for watching. More live news coming your way at 7 p.m. Korea time.